Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin, I'm a film critic and you're watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, television series reviews, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and you like movie adjacent popular culture and you like to see somebody pick those things apart, then you've come to the right place and you should consider subscribing. Today I'm reviewing The Suicide Squad, the new film from the DCEU and writer-director James Gunn that is not a sequel to the other film Suicide Squad that came out a few years ago, and it's not a reboot of that film either. It is sort of its own thing. And like most people reviewing the movie, I quite liked it, but probably not quite as much as some of the superlatives you have probably seen in headlines and early reviews. As I'm recording this, the movie has like a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll put up here whatever it is when I actually am done editing this video. I imagine it'll shrink a little bit more by the time the weekend gets here, but suffice to say, it's getting rave reviews. People seem to really love the movie. But right now, I feel like so much of the positive sentiment for the film is less direct praise for the movie itself, and more an easy repudiation of David Ayer's controversial and oft-maligned film that preceded this one. But for me, I never hated the original Suicide Squad film enough to desperately need someone to come in and fix it. And I was never a big enough fan of James Gunn's MCU work to be excited about him being the one to do it. The main two things that did get me excited about this movie were the Red Band trailer and John Cena. As for the former, it's not so much because I think every superhero movie should be R-rated, brutal, and vulgar, but because the idea of James Gunn getting to make the movie he wanted to make and not having Kevin Feige over his shoulder seemed like a fun prospect. Even if it ended up being a failure, I'd rather see someone really go for it and miss rather than play it kinda safe. As for Cena, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's the doctor of thugonomics.
There is a doctor in the house!
I'll follow that man wherever he goes.
And I've decided that you should eat a big bag of dicks.
If this whole beach was completely covered in dicks, and somebody said I'd eat every dick until the beach was clean for liberty, I would say no problemo.
Why would someone put penises all over the beach?
Who knows why madmen do what they do?
God, I love that man. But I love the general Suicide Squad concept. Disposable supervillains being recruited by the government to do fucked up Black Ops missions. One of the best things to come out of superhero comics in a very long time. I do think Ayer's film got much of the casting correct, had a dope soundtrack, and for the most part captured the underdog spirit of the source material. I feel like James Gunn's version is an improvement on the original in every way except musically, because the score for this new one is not great. And Gunn's needle drops are less charming than the throwbacks from the Guardians movies, or the truly exemplary magic of Purple Lamborghini.
Ain't that easy?
It also doesn't have any moments as perfect as this one.
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
But it is otherwise better written, more competently edited, and a pretty appropriate midway point between the dramatic violence of a war movie and the inherent absurdity of DC's superhero world, finding a pretty strong balance between genuine pathos and actual hilarity. Pretty much everyone that is in this movie from the last Suicide Squad film that gets to carry over is better in this one than they were in the last one. Joel Kinnaman, for instance, is an actor I find very boring in everything that he does, and he has a lot of fun here. He seems like a little more fleshed out, a little more likable, a little more interesting. And Viola Davis is reliably great as Amanda Waller. I don't think she gets quite as much screen time as I would have liked, but she's still perfect in the part. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn continues to be pretty good, and I think that of the movies she has been in this role, this is the movie that uses her like the most effectively. Birds of Prey probably more so than this one, but in the sense that I think that her particular take on the character works best when used sparingly, and I feel like she's in this movie just the right amount. There's not too much of her, not too little. It's like just the right sprinkling. I feel like Idris Elba's Bloodsport fits into this world a little bit better than Will Smith's Deadshot did, and Elba just, I feel like, is a little bit more versatile when it comes to stuff like this. I feel like he's, as a performer, he's a little more game to try different things. Obviously, John Cena steals the whole show. Like, I won't cannibalize the entire video talking about how much I love him as the Peacemaker, other than to say that I think the Peacemaker series that James Gunn is doing for HBO Max is going to end up being the best thing that comes out of this entire development. I think this movie is pretty good, but I think that by the time that show comes, we won't even think about this movie because really the Peacemaker is like the best thing to come out of it. Cena's having a blast. It's the perfect marriage of part and player, and I love him in this. But the two people that surprised me the most actually were Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher 2. Two characters that I ended up really, really liking, really finding interesting viewpoints into, who are funny and actually like interesting and stuff, and really good stuff from them as well. As much as I like The Suicide Squad, and as much as I think that it's a movie that really does what it sets out to do, and I think it's going to be a real crowd pleaser to pretty much anyone that was even on the fence about seeing it, I think that the fact that it's available on HBO Max means that like it's even easier to just decide to bite the bullet on. But I think the only issue I really have with the movie, other than the fact that it's like maybe 15, 20 minutes too long, I don't think this movie needs to be 2 hours and 10 minutes. I think there's definitely plenty that they could have shaved here or there to make it a little bit tighter, and it's not like they didn't have a whole lot of extra time to do that, but whatever, nitpicking. The thing for me about the movie is it doesn't feel quite as emotional or quite as funny as it thinks it is. To the first point, I think that people like the fact that James Gunn can do big, crazy, like gross out humor and violence and stuff, but that ultimately he's a guy who really cares about the emotional through line underneath all of his stories. Like the Guardians films obviously have a lot of very like powerful little moments that people really connect with in terms of the emotionality of the characters. This does that, and it does it better than the Ayer version of the movie, but not to the degree that I think it thinks it does. By that I mean that I just got out of Suicide Squad a couple of hours ago, and earlier in the day I went to another screening and I watched another screener that got sent to me. So I watched two other movies today, and I'm not going to tell you what those two movies were. I'm reviewing them for the channel and also for Looper. But if you look at my letterbox right now and look at the two movies that I watched before I logged The Suicide Squad, both of those movies made me cry for different reasons. The Suicide Squad did not come close to actually pushing me into that territory, like at all. And when you see one of the two movies that I logged on Letterboxd that I cried during multiple times, you're gonna think either that I need therapy, or you're gonna think, oh, maybe The Suicide Squad's really cold or something, because the movie does push you in that direction. The movie does have a lot of little moments in between the big crazy stuff from the trailers where they really are trying to get you to feel things, and they do a pretty good job, but I just don't think that it was there. I don't think they really got there the way they felt like they got there. And I've seen other people respond to the movie where they seem to be really emotionally moved by it, and I just wasn't. And I don't know if that's just because I was movied out for the day, which happens. That's the hazard of being a film critic. Some days you're just not feeling it the way you might on other days. Or if it's just the fact that so much of the movie is about the spectacle and about the ridiculousness of the concept and the execution of that concept, that the time spent on the emotional beats doesn't play the same way. And I don't know if that's just a tone thing or if that's just like a personal preference thing, but that side, the slightly more serious side of the movie, to me felt lacking, which is like fine. It's not something I was desperate for from this movie to begin with. But there were times I could tell like they're tugging at my heartstrings and they want me to feel a certain way, and I just don't. And I don't know if it's because I didn't think it was sincere or genuine enough or what, but that was something that definitely stuck out to me in the movie. I was like, wow, I cried a lot of movies today, not this one. Weird. And as for the humor side of things, I think the movie's pretty funny. I think that Cena's really funny in it. I think pretty much everyone has at least one really good bit that's really entertaining and like definitely a crowd pleaser at the screening that I was at. But there are things in the movie where you can tell they felt like they were home runs, like, oh my God, like the stuff that I'm pretty sure people are gonna like meme on Twitter over the weekend, and the things that people are really gonna like pop for. For me, I just kept feeling like these are good. These are good moments. They're very, very good. They didn't feel special the way it felt like Gunn felt they were, if that makes sense. Like obviously I'm kind of ascribing, you know, opinions and feelings about a person I don't know, I've never met, so I could be wrong. But there's like a sort of a self-satisfaction to the movie at times that feels like the work of someone who thinks they're really nailing it. And I feel like you're like, yeah, you hung it on the wall. It's not going to fall off or anything, but I don't know that you're really, really nailing it here. I think this is like just pretty good. And I think the fact that the bar was set so low for most people hating the last film, that pretty good and serviceable feels amazing by comparison. That's the vibe I got. But for instance, there's a big opening set piece that's pretty well done and it's pretty well constructed and it's pretty funny, but you can tell that like people are gonna hype this scene up as being insane and all this stuff, and I was like, this is fine. It's exactly what I expected them to do in the movie. Like if you've taken the time to watch the trailers, you've basically seen the movie. There's almost nothing special in the movie that has not been given away in the trailers. And that's the thing, that's all movies are kind of like this now, obviously, but this movie specifically, like all the really best beats, you've seen them. They're better in context, sure, but there's no big like tricks up their sleeve, I would say. But I do think a big part of the discourse for this movie is going to be around the fact that it's basically the only major movie other than the Joss Whedon cut of the Justice League that you can say is a DC movie that was done by someone who also worked in the MCU. Obviously, this movie will be sort of a center point in the arguments in the culture war between those two warring fandoms. And the way I feel about it is that this movie does sort of prove that the risk-reward ratio of just letting a director kind of do what they want to do, you can sometimes get really good things out of that. That's seemingly been DC's ethos going forward, especially after the Snyder Cut debacle. And it's like, hey, yeah, if you just get someone that you trust with the material and let them do what they want, there's a good chance something good's going to come out of it. They'll make some choices. They won't always be the best ones, but it'll be a pretty authentic product versus the sort of constant brand management it takes to keep the MCU as successful as it is. And I will say, I am not someone who is a humongous fan of the Guardians films. I like them, but I'm not like head over heels for them or anything. And I will say I think the Suicide Squad is better than both of the Guardians films, but only because I like the cast here more. On a one-to-one basis, there is no one in the Suicide Squad who is doing work as good as Bradley Cooper's voice work as Rocket Raccoon. I think the Cooper's Rocket is one of the 3 best performances in the entire MCU. It's arguably the best performance Cooper's like done in his entire actual career, except for maybe like his turn in David O. Russell's Joy. And
it's about the hands, because that's what people use. They hold things they care about, and her hands are going to become their hands.
I don't know, I guess parts of A Star Is Born, but yeah, no one here is as good as Rocket, period, in my opinion. But collectively, the whole team that they focus this movie around, I love way more than the team from Guardians. Like, half of those people I could just care less about. And I'm a big Batista mark, but like Drax is just fine to me. I like Groot, I guess, but the actual core team here, they felt more like misfits. They feel more like underdogs. They feel more like a ragtag group of people that find something together. Like, I actually bought it, I think, more than I did in either Guardians movies. And I don't know, I really appreciated that. That was like the thing that I was kind of the wariest about. I was a little bit worried that the movie would just be James Gunn killing off zealous DC characters, which is what most Suicide Squad comics are, so that wouldn't have been a bad thing. But I do think that the characters he chooses to center, the ones that aren't there just for fodder, I think they do some really fun things with them. I just don't think those things are quite as funny as they think they are, or quite as dramatically satisfying. But still quite good. One of the better DC movies, easily. I had a really good time. I like that it's like bloody, but not like egregiously so. It's brutal, but not like too much. It's grosser than I expected. There's a lot of just gross shit in this movie that I was not personally prepared for. I'm not a big gross guy. I don't like gross things. But I dug it. Like, I thought it was a good time. Like, if the music was just better, like if there was at least one Young Thug song in here somewhere, maybe I would have liked it even more. But as it stands, I think the Suicide Squad is a success. I think it's very good. I am dying to see all 8 episodes of The Peacemaker because Cena just kills it in this movie and I can't wait to see him do more stuff. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Suicide Squad. I liked it. I had a fun time watching it. I think you will too. But the comment section below is where you can tell me if you do like it once you see it. Like, if you see the movie, come to the comments, tell me what you thought. I want to see what you guys think about the movie, if you're even going to watch it. If you have any trepidations, what did you think about James Gunn? What did you think about the Guardians films? What did you think, more importantly, about the last Suicide Squad movie? A movie that a lot of people hate, but I think is pretty neat. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos. And yeah, hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, being good to yourselves and each other. I will see you all in the next video very, very soon. Bye.